The Money Show. Personal finance.
Warren Ingram, director at Galileo Capital, he's a financial advisor, is Warren Ingram. The temptation now is to talk about what happens if Pravin Gordhan goes, but I'm not really ready emotionally to face that yet, because I think it'd be a bit abysmal as a scenario. And after listening to Bernard Hotz, I'm sorry, I'm changing the subject. I want to know more about this idea of financial freedom. It's a notion to which we all ascribe. We've got this idea in our heads that we want to be financially free. And then we've got a political party that says it's all about financial freedom. And people have got, a bit like interpretations of fraud, it would seem, very different ideas on what financial freedom is. What is it?
Financial freedom is the ability to live off your assets, so that your assets can generate an income that cover your costs on a monthly basis. So it's definitely not the concept of being wealthy, which I think is a very different thing. So financial freedom would be, I need 20,000 Rand a month to live, and I've got assets that can generate that for me, and therefore I don't need to work for my salary every month just to cover my costs. I can choose to do what I want with my time.
So financial freedom is the equivalent of getting an income, a bit like having a job without having to do anything, because a property that you've got pays you lots of rent, or the investments you've got give you nice dividend flows, things like that. Being wealthy means you never think about it and you just live.
Exactly. I think being wealthy, to me, requires an element of luck. Either you win the genetic lottery, so you're just happen to be born into the right family, or like Warren Buffett always says, he was lucky enough to be born as a male in America just after World War II, or you luck into a trend and you happen to be in the right place at the right time, and so obviously it requires a lot of hard work, etc., etc. I'm not saying that people who are wealthy don't work hard. But financial freedom is something that anybody can do without luck. You don't need luck to be financially free.
Okay, but you get a great job, you get a great salary. Does that equate to financial freedom, a decent, big, fat income?
No, and I think that's where a lot of people, unfortunately, fall into financial slavery, if you want, because they start to live according to their income as opposed to living according to a sustainable lifestyle. So that means they buy the bigger car, and every time they get a raise, they buy a bigger house, and live a more lavish life. And the problem with that is it becomes a double-edged sword. You have this bigger life, which means one day when you're no longer earning an income, you need even more assets just to fund this bigger life. And it's really difficult to go backwards. If you're used to living on 100,000 Rand a month and you suddenly need to live on 20,000 Rand a month, it's emotionally, physically, everything incredibly difficult to do. So to me, someone earning a big salary or starting to earn a big salary, the thing they should do is try to maintain the lifestyle they had before that salary started. Let it increase, of course, a little bit, but if your salary is going up by 20%, allow your lifestyle to go up by 5%. And that's a way you develop sustainable financial freedom.
Where does the idea of tax fit into this concept of financial freedom?
It happens in two ways. One, it's amazing how many times I meet people and I ask them about the range of investments that they have, and they tell me that their tax advisor told them that they needed to take these investments because they save a lot of tax. And unfortunately, they're terrible investments. And so they end up saving tax, which is great, but at the sacrifice of real capital growth and long-term inflation protection. So that's terrible, and that's just not a way. Saving tax, nobody wants to pay tax unnecessarily, and that's understandable. But at the same time, you need to be aware that simply just a smart tax-saving tool might not actually be a great investment.
I mean, retirement annuities, very often when you talk to financial advisors, they'll say, so when you buy a retirement annuity, it's like you get 30% for nothing, and that's up front. And immediately I want to run away screaming, because while it may be true that you get a tax break and it's pre-tax money that you're able to invest in a retirement annuity, and it's got to be tied up until the age of 55 at least, and then there are rules on how much you can draw it out and when you draw it out, and you will pay tax on those drawings. It's not the reason to buy a particular RA. You're buying for investment return. The tax benefit is a nice addition.
I think that's 100%. A lot of the time, especially in the older days, RAs were sold as insurance products only, and very expensive, very vague, very opaque underlying portfolios. You couldn't understand what they were, and the returns were really poor. So whatever tax benefit you were getting was simply being eroded by no or very little capital growth. But if you do buy, I mean nowadays the unit trust world and everybody else has launched RAs that are transparent and often very low cost. If you do find a low cost RA that you can understand the performance of and that does generate you good performance, it is pretty much a no-brainer. I guess the tax deduction is good and certainly very beneficial. But the other thing is the money that stays inside the RA while it's growing, it attracts no income tax, no dividends tax, no capital gains tax. So your growth is tax-free as well. Of course, when you decide to draw an income from that one day, then you're going to pay tax as if you were earning a salary. So it's not that's the end part. But any tax deferred, if it's in a good growth investment and a low cost investment, is a good tax to defer.
And that one of the things that I don't get jealous of many things. I do get jealous of wealthy people who tend to have, and the greatest freedom that they have, being wealthy or being financially independent or financially free, is they seem to have considerable amounts of time. And time is a luxury that very few of us can afford.
Exactly, and to me, that's nowadays how we measure wealth. Is not in a bank balance or a balance sheet, I should say, but rather what do you do with your time and what do you have to do with your time. So I guess we can pick on the lawyers, for example, because we just had one on the show. They have to charge for their time. So every minute that they're not working, during working hours, when they're on holiday with their families, etc., that holiday is measured in time, not spent earning.
Yeah, and it's costing money. It's good. There's the price of the holiday, and then there's the opportunity cost of taking the time off to have a holiday. And that's very expensive.
And then, it's not just the lawyers, it's the doctors, and what happens then is they measure everything in this time. The time suddenly becomes their master, and that's, to me, it doesn't matter how much money you're earning then. If you're measuring, your family time in rands not earned, it's a terrible place, a terrible way to live. Whereas, someone who's financially free, who says, okay, I only need 20,000 a month to live. I've got sufficient capital to do that, and they decide that they're going to work in a charity for nothing, or they're going to go and teach and earn a relatively low salary, but they choose to do that. To me, that's the real definition of wealth.
Why? And so often financial planning, so often financial thinking excludes people's spouses. And I understand that everybody operates differently, but if you are leaving your spouse out of the financial planning equation, are you making a mistake?
That's probably one of the biggest destroyers of wealth after debt. Is this failure to work as an economic unit between the two spouses. Very often, it should be a conversation. I think one of the many conversations you should have before you decide to get married is, do we want children, and let's discuss how we manage our money, and how do you do it and how do I do it? Because if you've got one spouse and it doesn't form, there's no gender specifics here. Both genders are equally good or equally bad. But if you've got one partner that spends, and doesn't save at all, and the other partner really, concentrates on saving, what happens then is you've got two horses pulling in completely the opposite direction, which means you go absolutely nowhere. And that's bad from a financial planning point of view, and secondly, terrible for the dynamics of a marriage. So,
fans of the Julia story will know that she met somebody, got engaged, and married somebody who shares those financial values to which she sticks. And
they have that game plan, and it's designed and agreed long before the first crisis hits, whatever the crisis is. Which means when life happens, they're ready for it. They know exactly what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, and that's that partnership is absolutely vital to financial freedom.
And I've got to ask you one last question before I let you go. One of the things that people will often say is the only way to secure real financial freedom or even wealth is to own your own business. And then people get very excited about the sort of business they might own, because then it becomes living the dream. And they start thinking, I've got to own the Apple shop, or I've got to own the top end restaurant, or I've got to do something.
Build an app.
I've got to or just do something sexy.
Yeah. So the tech industry and the amount of money that it's created for a few people in a ridiculously short time frame, I think has done a lot of damage to school leavers, because the number of times I sit with a group of school leavers and ask them what they want to do, and they all want to design a game, invent the next Apple, etc., and it's just not the way to be sure of generating money. Rather find a niche, and this is really, we're getting to Pablo's area now, but find a niche.
Pablo who?
Find a gap
Yes.
that the market already wants to have filled, and often it's in unfashionable things. Plumbers and electricians and builders, etc. Not glamorous jobs at all, but those are demands that people always have that need to be filled, and that's a way of building up a surefire income stream that's reliable, that you can then save and get to that financial freedom.
Warren Ingram from Galileo Capital looking